You know, Solomon said in the Proverbs that a man who answers a matter before he hears it, it's folly and shame unto him. And these folks have just answered before they've really understood what's going on. And Jesus said unto them, Ye shall indeed drink of the cup that I drink of, and with the baptism that I am baptized withal shall ye be baptized. But to sit on my right hand and on my left hand is not mine to give, but it shall be given to them for whom it is prepared. Welcome back to this segment of Datum Line, and we're dealing with economic myths and the science of deceit. What are we up to? Part 5, I think. Anyway, we're reading from the Gospel according to Mark at chapter 10, and we're up to verse 42, 43. But Jesus called them to him. Oh, correction, I'm going to back up a little further here. Verse 40. But to sit on my right hand and to give and on my left hand is not mine to give, but it shall be given to them for whom it is prepared, Jesus said to these two, this being James and John, the sons of Zebedee. Verse 41. And when the 10 heard it, that's the other 10 disciples, they began to be much displeased with James and John. Verse 42. But Jesus called them to him, and saith unto them, Ye know that they which are accounted to rule over the Gentiles, that being over the nations, and oftentimes that's Israel in dispersion. You kind of get a clue with that. It's always with a capital G, making it a proper noun, even though it isn't a proper noun. Exercise lordship over them, and their great ones exercise authority upon them. But so shall it not be among you. Now here's the clincher. But whosoever will be great among you shall be your minister. Now the word minister there is the Greek word diakonos, which literally means a waiter on tables or a servant. Verse 44, And whosoever of you will be the chiefest shall be servant of all. For even the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister, or to serve, if you will, and to give his life a ransom for many. By the way, that's not a ransom for all. It's a ransom for many. Now, this is where we get the concept of a public servant. See, in Christendom, even places like England, as far gone as they are, and America, as far gone as we are, there was once a concept of public servants. That's why in England and such other countries, you have a ministry of education. They're to serve the public. You have a ministry of defense. It's to serve the people, not to lord it over the people. Now that's an old biblical concept. In fact, we can go back to 2 Samuel chapter 23, verse 1, 2, and 3. Now these, 2 Samuel 23, 1, now these be the last words of David. David, the son of Jesse, said, now this is King David, and the man who was raised up on high, the anointed of the God of Jacob, and the sweet psalmist of Israel, said, The Spirit of the Lord spake by me, and his word was in my tongue. Verse 3, the God of Israel said, The rock of Israel spake to me. That rock, by the way, is identified by the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians 10 and verse 4 as being in the wilderness with the Israelites. The Israelites in the wilderness experience were following Christ. They were Christian. That wasn't Judaism back then, although you see evidence of Judaism being practiced. That was the tradition of the elders. That was a different religion altogether. But the rock of Israel spake to me, He that ruleth over men must be just, ruling in the fear of God. Does that sound like a sovereign government to you? A sovereign government over the people? Or does it sound like the king was to serve God on behalf of the people? Well, let's go to David's son, Solomon, a great king. And King Solomon said in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 13, Ecclesiastes 12 and verse 13, Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Now this was a king in Israel who did not set himself up to be above the law, but was subject to the law. And he, being subject to the law of God, was then a servant of God on behalf of the people. The concept of a public servant is unique, I believe, to and in Christendom. Well, let's go on to point number 5 with regards to Mr. Thorne and Mr. Warner in their book, The Truth in Money book. Point number 5, quote, money can have no value of itself. Wow. But serves as a valid and indispensable representation of whatever development and productive capabilities exist in the economy. End quote. What on earth are they saying? Money can have no value of itself, but serves as a valid and indispensable representation of whatever what? Development and productive whatever values exist in the economy. That's what they're talking about. Says who? These authors believe that what we use as money can have no desirable characteristics that would inspire us to ascribe any subjective or psychological value to such money. Find me a boat owner who's willing to anchor his boat to nothing when stormy winds begin to blow, and I'll show you a former boat owner. For the last 50 years, we have anchored our values to absolutely nothing, with the results being our forfeiture of our wealth. Several thousand years of economic history are thrown out the window by another set of godmen who, along with Karl Marx, were ready to re-engineer civilization along anti-biblical, anti-Christian lines where everything else we value must be priced, measured, and compared to nothing of value. That is quite a system. And we were looking at point number 5 of the fundamentals of monetary science developed by Peter Cook, the outline of which was written by Karl Marx. Anyway, point number 5, I'm going to review that. Money can have no value of itself, but serves as a valid and indispensable representation of whatever development and productive capabilities exist in the economy. Well, this is what we've been doing for half a century, ever since Congress and the Federal Reserve stole the last of our lawful money in 1965. As with the gold of my grandparents, which was stolen in 1935, Congress and the Federal Reserve didn't ask my parents for their silver. They stole it, and without warning. Yet believers in sovereign government, which is supposed to have an absolute monopoly over money, actually they mean credit, are unable to explain why that was a sin. Because they want to reestablish the very same kind of monopoly of centralized control over a credit system in the very same hands. Prior to 1965, we had greater price stability when gold and silver exerted some influence over credit instruments that were dominated, unfortunately, by fraud. And no one within the sound of my voice ever lived under a pure, free enterprise monetary system where credit did not dilute the value and stability of real money. Stable values are obtained when you compare a known quantity of one tangible item, let's say a 2 by 10 by 16 spruce, pine, and fir, to a known quantity of another tangible item, such as a tennis ball, with the resulting parity of, let's say, 7 tennis balls trading for one 2 by 10 by 16. When all goods and services in the economy are traded for, measured against, or compared to tangible gold or silver used as money, such a comprehensive system of parities is called price. When a certain brand of 16-ounce hammer was priced in silver, its parity or ratio to silver might remain quite stable, even for years, assuming the bankers didn't float a lot of phony IOUs for silver to water down the value of silver. But when our wealth is priced in units of absolutely nothing, then the creators of fiat money will inevitably create a lot more nothing in a world of rising prices. If you, or Congress, could get what you wanted for nothing, why would you, or Congress, create only enough fiat money to get 1/10 of what you really want? Why live within your financial means when there is no physical monetary limit imposed upon you or your fanciful dreams? Let's move on to point number 6. Quote, money is sought after and made universally acceptable. What does that mean? Made universally acceptable. Well, they don't mean to fashion or to construct. They mean to force. You don't think so? Listen, let me go back. Money is sought after and made universally acceptable in exchange for goods and services through legal tender laws requiring its use for the payment of debts and taxes. So let's see what that really means. Money is sought after and made by force of law universally acceptable in exchange for goods and services through legal tender laws requiring its use for the payment of debts and taxes. End quote. This is how our social engineers plan to attain and maintain free enterprise in a free society at point number 4. They plan to do it by coercion. That's a great foundation, isn't it? Congress compels, and we must obey. To quote Thorne and Warner, their book, according to page 240, quote, constitutes a phenomenal breakthrough in understanding the scientific framework for economic progress, end quote. Well, that's a modest appraisal. And it's their own appraisal. This book constitutes a phenomenal breakthrough in the understanding of scientific framework for economic progress, end quote. Isn't it peculiar how scientific and economic progress can only be achieved on behalf of free enterprise, they say, in a free society, they say, by use of government force? Do you suppose anyone ever forced our ancestors to accept gold and silver in exchange for their goods and services? I doubt it. They were using precious metals long before any government ever placed their official seal on a single coin. That was free enterprise. But no one within the sound of my voice has ever enjoyed a free market economy in the socialist, centrally planned, highly regulated, confiscatory credit system of this USSA. Sorry to burst your bubble. 7. Money serves its primary purpose as a universally acceptable medium of exchange. Oh, whoa, hold on just a moment. I'm going to stop right there. Does it? Money serves its primary purpose as a universally acceptable medium of exchange. Now, this is a myth you're going to find in Federal Reserve publications. You're going to find it in economics textbook after textbook. And these people quote it. Well, it must be true, right? Because that's the only game going. Well, we're going to challenge that. When my ancestors, I don't know about yours, but when my ancestors used tangible silver, let's say, as money, what were they using as a medium of exchange? Money? No, they were using silver. Silver was being used as money, and if silver was being used as money, then silver was being used as the medium of exchange. You understand that? Now, money itself is intangible. Silver is not intangible. You can go to a periodic chart. You can find an atomic number, an atomic weight, a specific gravity. You can take a picture of silver. You can drop silver on the floor and hear it hit the floor. You can put it in your mouth. By the way, that's not a dangerous activity unless you swallow it, because it's antibacterial. That's how you purify water, if you want. Okay, which makes it a great money, right? Because it's not poisonous. You can actually put it in your mouth. Okay. You can see it, smell it, hear it, taste it, or touch it. Silver's tangible. Money is not tangible. There's no such tangible thing as money. Now, since money is intangible, how is it possible to use an intangible abstract idea, money, as a medium of exchange when a medium of exchange is also an abstract thought or idea.